Welcome to another episode of my Wheel of Time reread on Reading the Pattern. We'll be talking about The Eye of the World chapters 14 through 17, in which we rile up some white cloaks and dig into an absolute mountain of foreshadowing. This video may include spoilers for all Wheel of Time books. If you have not finished reading the series and do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk. In these chapters, our group remains in Baerlon. Here, Nynaeve is finally able to catch up and resolves to continue on with the group. We are also introduced to some white cloaks and my girl, Min. Let's review the notebook of our favorite Ogier to remind ourselves what happened in these chapters. The first priority at the inn is taking baths, while Moiraine also prioritizes talking to a girl named Min. Mat almost reveals that Trollocs had been in the Two Rivers before the rest of the men practically jump on him to stop him. They all gather in a private dining room and discuss the rumors in Baerlon that the false dragon Logain has won a battle in Gildan. Rand dreams for the first time of a man calling himself Baal-Zaman, who threatens that Rand will serve him or be used by Aes Sedai, though he doesn't seem to know whether Rand is the one of the three that he is looking for. He breaks a rat's back with a crook of his finger and then nearly does the same to Rand before Rand wakes up. Rand wakes up feeling achy and heads out wanting to see the city. He overhears a discussion between the innkeeper Master Fitch and the cook reveals to Rand that there have been dead rats with broken backs all around the inn. Rand wants to ask Tom for advice about whether he should tell Moiraine about his dream, but Tom is performing in the common room, so Rand goes to Perrin instead. Mat has already left the inn, but Perrin is staying in their room, not feeling well after having the same dream as Rand. Rand heads out into the city, but runs into Min in the stable yard. She tells him she, quote, sees pieces of the pattern, which appear as images around people, and that sometimes she knows what they mean, but always what she sees does happen. Rand also runs into Padan Fain and tries to convince him to come back to the inn with him, but Fain wants nothing to do with Moiraine, so he runs away. Mat shows up, and we find out he had the same dream as Rand and Perrin. Rand starts feeling even more oddly before a group of white cloaks show up. Mat decides to prank them by setting some barrels loose on them, and Rand angers them by laughing. The white cloaks, including Lord Bornhald, threaten Rand, but are dispersed by the city watchmen. Mat and Rand find Tom advertising in the city and tell him about their dreams, and he convinces them not to tell Moiraine. They run back to the inn to convince Perrin not to say anything either, and he tells them that Nynaeve has arrived at the inn. Min tells Rand that Nynaeve is also part of the same web of the pattern the rest of them are in. The group gathers, and Nynaeve furiously questions Moiraine. She wants the Emmonsfielders to return home with her and to get them away from the Aes Sedai. Rand tells Nynaeve that they cannot go home, and Moiraine tries to convince Nynaeve that they will be safer with her. Nynaeve and Moiraine speak alone, and afterwards, Nynaeve tells Rand that Moiraine wanted to know if any of the boys had been born outside of the Two Rivers. Although Nynaeve did not reveal the truth to Moiraine, she does confirm to Rand what he had already suspected, that he had been born elsewhere. Tom performs in the common room, and all of the rest, except Lan, dance. Rand dances with Nynaeve, Moiraine, and Egwene, and notices a man with a scar watching him. After the party breaks up, he tells Lan, who thinks the man must be a White Cloak spy. They plan to leave in the morning, but then a Fade appears, speaking to Rand before disappearing, and they decide they must leave immediately. Both Tom and Nynaeve decide to continue on with the group. Moiraine tries to convince the innkeeper that he may be in trouble, but he refuses to listen. The group is stopped at the gate and are attempting to pay them to open it at night when the White Cloaks catch up and accuse them of being dark friends. Moiraine is forced to reveal herself and use the power in order for them to escape. They notice a fire in the city that must be the Stag and Lion. They continue on into the night, making a brief stop and heading on again before dawn. Let's take a look at all the fascinating details and hints of what is to come in Robert Jordan's master plan. During Rand's dream, Baal-Zaman, aka Ishamael, aka Ilan Morin, reveals that he was by Luce there inside during the events of the prologue, and was the one who gave him enough sanity to realize what he had done. This detail alone should be enough to tell us that this man is not the Dark One, no matter what he names himself. Of course, we do not yet know that Ishamael was once called Elan Morin. At some point later, we do find out that Ishamael was also called the Betrayer of Hope, and this final clue is what will tell us that the man in the prologue and the man in Rand, Mat, and Perrin's dreams are one and the same. Ishamael also reveals in this dream that he has been manipulating events in the world for thousands of years. Now, we have to talk in some detail about all of Min's viewings. Seeing sparks and shadow around all of the group, and stronger when they are together, seems to be an indication that all of them will be crucial to fighting the shadow, and that they are all being woven into a web of the pattern. She sees that Rand and Egwene love each other, but, quote, "She's not for you, or you for her, not the way you both want." This one is straightforward. Rand and Egwene will not end up together. For Lan, she sees, quote, 7 ruined towers around his head and a babe in a cradle holding a sword. The 7 ruined towers, of course, is a reference to Malkir and Lan's claim to the lost throne. The babe with the sword is a little more interesting because Robert Jordan has said that Min's viewings always refer to the future. When Lan was a baby, he was given a sword in his cradle, but can this be what the viewing refers to when it's in the past? We never get confirmation that Lan and Nynaeve will have a baby, but it's not unlikely to think that they would, and perhaps this is what the viewing actually means. For Tom, her vision of, quote, a man, not him, juggling fire, and the White Tower, seems to refer to his nephew Owen, who could channel and was gentled by Red sisters. But since this was also in the past, maybe this also refers to Tom's continued involvement with a man who can channel and the White Tower through Rand and Moiraine. For Perrin, she sees, quote, a wolf and a broken crown and trees flowering all around him. The wolf is obvious. Perrin will be a wolf brother. The broken crown is a reference to the fact that his future wife, Faile, will be in line to take the throne in Saldea. The flowering trees, I believe, is a reference to Perrin mourning the deaths of his family and their burial in an orchard. For Mat, a red eagle refers to Manetheren and his old blood. Quote, an eye on a balance scale is the act of giving up one of his eyes to save Moiraine. A dagger with a ruby is the Shadar Logoth dagger, and a horn, the horn of Valir, which he will blow in Falme. A laughing face doesn't really seem to be specific enough to anything to be sure what that refers to. As for Rand, there's a ton to unpack. A sword that isn't a sword refers to Kalandor. And this is actually a really big clue here that Rand is the Dragon Reborn, because only 2 chapters previously, Tom first introduced us to the prophecies of the dragon and called Kalandor the sword that cannot be touched, while also saying he does not know if it is a sword. A golden crown of laurel leaves refers to the crown of Ilion, which Rand will wear. A beggar's staff refers to the time that Rand appears as a beggar before his epiphany on Dragonmount. Rand, quote, pouring water on sand is both literally him bringing water to Rhuidean, but also perhaps more symbolically him bringing the Aiel to the wetlands. A bloody hand and a white-hot iron is the loss of Rand's hand to Semirhage. Quote, 3 women standing on a funeral bier and you on it refers to Min herself, Elaine, and Avienda, who all pretend to mourn Rand after his supposed death. And black rock wet with blood is Rand's blood on the rocks of Shaial Ghul, which falls from the wound in his side in the last battle. And finally, she sees lightning coming out of him and striking at him. This is likely a reference to him channeling as well as being in conflict with other channelers. All of these viewings are honestly amazing, since many of them are not fulfilled until very late in the series, and at least one of them we may never actually see fulfilled in the series itself. Lastly, there are several details that indicate that Rand is suffering from his first bout of channeling sickness in Chapter 15. His actions match almost point for point with the description that Moiraine later gives to Nynaeve. And this occurs 10 days after the night they left the 2 rivers, which was when Rand channeled for the first time. Rand has a headache, his head feeling, quote, tight as a drum, his emotions oddly disconnected. He feels feverish and flushed. He acts giddy and recklessly with the White Cloaks. And then all of these things just suddenly disappear. Let's discuss the central themes and focal points that these chapters are woven around. Perhaps the most prominent emotion in these chapters is suspicion. Rand is most of all suspicious of Moiraine and Aes Sedai in general. to the point that even though he has a seriously disturbing dream, and she has already specifically asked him to tell her about his dreams, he does not want to trust her enough to do so. Matt and Perrin apparently feel much the same. They are, fortunately, less suspicious of Tom and willing to go to him for advice about their dreams. But Tom is trying to shield them from Aes Sedai as much as possible. He may be smart enough to know they need Moiraine's help, but he too is suspicious of her intentions for the boys and advises them to keep quiet. Nynaeve, for her part, when she shows up, is even more suspicious of Moiraine, not ready to put any trust in her whatsoever. Lan literally says he is suspicious of everyone. The town of Baerlon itself seems whirling with suspicion, with rumors of trouble in the Mountains of Mist and white cloaks stirring up fears about dark friends everywhere. Probably the only instance of someone not being suspicious when they actually should be is when Rand meets up with Padan Fain. Fain honestly could not be acting any sketchier, but Rand doesn't even seem to question how Fain got to Baerlon so quickly or why he is acting so oddly. To be fair to Rand, he is suffering from channeling sickness at the time, and that may excuse his lack of suspicion here. The decision not to trust Moiraine has more to do with prejudice, to be honest. But both choices, to trust Fain enough to tell him where they are staying, and the choice not to tell Moiraine about the dream, turn out to be fairly disastrous. Let's break down the characters and their defining moments in these chapters. Here is our first full introduction to Nynaeve, and we actually learn a lot about her in only 2 chapters. There's the fact that she took it upon herself to follow Egwene and the boys, while the small-town political factions back home are still arguing about what to do. She impresses Lan with her tracking skills, and damn, that is impressive. This seems to be what first gets his attention and starts their odd but fun brand of flirtation. The boys and Egwene all seem to hold her in awe, despite the fact that they know her so well and she is not much older than them. But they, better than anyone, know the strength of her determination, how capable she is of getting what she wants, and the fieriness of her temper. Egwene, despite her own fierce independence, actually hides her unbraided hair at first to avoid the eventual confrontation over it. The conversation that Nynaeve has with Rand shows more than anything the depth of her genuine caring and compassion for Rand and the Two Rivers people in general, and the lengths she will go to protect them. Let's talk about what we need to know about the Dark One and all of his minions and followers. The biggest influence of the Shadow in these chapters comes from Padan Fain, a dark friend who has been hunting for the Dark One, and by this time knows he is hunting for Rand, Mat, and Perrin. We later find out that he actually went to Shaial Ghul twice and met with Ishamael, and what was done to him there has made his soul not quite human, even at this point. It was on his information that Trollocs were sent to the Two Rivers, and we can also surmise that after he meets with Rand in these chapters, it was Fain who sent the Fade to the Stag and Lion. Fain will evolve over the course of this series, but he is already well on his way to becoming the crazy quilt of evil that will make him an intriguing but revolting villain. And now, let's find a little levity amidst the darkness. Absolutely hilarious in hindsight is the whole exchange between Min and Rand when she's referring to the vision she has that she doesn't share with him of herself and 2 other women being in love with Rand. But if I told you everything I saw, you'd be as curly-haired as your friend with the shoulders. He jerked back from her hand as if it were red hot. What do you mean? Do you see anything about rats or dreams? Rats? No rats. As for dreams, maybe it's your idea of a dream, but I never thought it was mine. He wondered if she was crazy, grinning like that. I have to go, he said, edging around her. I have to meet my friends. Go then, but you won't escape. And then Rand literally runs away from her while she laughs, which is both creepy and hilarious once we know what she actually means. Rand is just completely discombobulated, and Min has absolutely no chill. Thanks for continuing on with me in this reread of The Wheel of Time. Be sure to stay tuned for my next video in which I will cover The Eye of the World chapters 18 through 20. Don't forget to let me know in the comments any favorite bits of foreshadowing or Aiel humor that I might have missed in these chapters so I can give you a shout out in a future video. And whether or not you could track a warder through the woods, be sure to subscribe for more Wheel of Time content, including speculation for the Wheel of Time TV series. See you next time in Shadar Logoth.